While we're still waiting for the formal outcomes of the negotiations, there are a few things I would like to share with you, some things that I take away from this COP28 in Dubai. Water is, finally, one might say, being placed at the heart of the climate discussions. We've had a presidential day dedicated specifically to water. We've had many events and discussions where water has been the topic. Second, lots of initiatives have been launched and financial commitments have been made, which is of course very positive. The coming months will be crucial in determining how these initiatives will be implemented. SIWI, for its parts, stands ready to lend its expertise and its networks for successful implementation of these initiatives. I am truly encouraged by the discussions and seeing that water is really seen now as much more than just a resource. Placing water at the heart and forefront of climate discussions is now crucial and has to lead to shaping of policies and strategies that enable impact in this area.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous, chers amis de l'eau. L'année 2023 se termine et le bilan de l'Institut méditerranéen de l'eau est très positif. Nous aurons l'occasion en janvier prochain de vous le présenter en même temps que le programme 2024. Nous pouvons citer cependant quelques moments phares de l'année, tels que notre participation en tant que membre du board du Conseil mondial de l'eau aux 3 boards qui se sont déroulés cette année, ainsi qu'aux 2 stakeholder meetings du 10e Forum mondial de l'eau de Bali qui ont eu lieu en février dernier et en septembre. Ensuite, l'organisation du kick-off du 5e Forum méditerranéen de l'eau à Valence en octobre dernier, ainsi qu'à notre participation au groupe de travail d'experts de l'Union pour la Méditerranée, organisé par Almota Abadi, le secrétaire général adjoint de l'Union pour la Méditerranée, présent aujourd'hui, que je salue, ainsi que notre participation au Nexus WEF de l'Union pour la Méditerranée. Nous avons également participé à la conférence internationale de Fès qui s'est tenue au Maroc, en collaboration avec le Conseil mondial de l'eau et les autorités marocaines. Nous avons organisé 3 ateliers sur la thématique de l'Observatoire des ressources en eau non conventionnelles et des énergies renouvelables, en juin à Rabat, en octobre à Valence et en décembre à Dubaï, tout récemment durant la COP28 sur le pavillon marocain. Nous avons été présents de manière très active à la 6e Cairo Water Week qui s'est tenue en novembre dernier, en partenariat avec la FAO, avec l'Union pour la Méditerranée et avec le Conseil mondial de l'eau. Nous avons enfin participé la semaine dernière au 8e Forum mondial de l'eau des villes qui s'est tenu à Daegu en Corée pour y représenter l'Institut méditerranéen de l'eau et le Conseil mondial de l'eau avec nos amis de Catalogne. Et non des moindres, nous avons organisé tout au long de cette année 8 conférences, dont celle-ci, et donc 5 consacrées à l'organisation et à la planification de la politique de gestion des ressources en eau de 10 pays méditerranéens en préparation de notre 5e Forum méditerranéen de l'eau de Tunis, ainsi qu'au processus méditerranéen de l'eau sur la route de Bali pour le Forum mondial de l'eau qui aura lieu au mois de mai prochain. Donc 2024 sera l'année des forums, celui de Tunis pour la Méditerranée du 5 au 7 février et celui de Bali pour le monde du 18 au 24 mai prochain. Aujourd'hui, nous répondons à une sollicitation de la Water Governance Facility et de SIWI, Stockholm International Water Institute, et il faut le dire, de notre ami Moaz Alaoui, que la plupart d'entre vous connaissent et qui dirige aujourd'hui le bureau de SIWI pour le Moyen-Orient et la Méditerranée basé à Amman, en Jordanie. SIWI nous propose aujourd'hui d'aborder le sujet de la Water Integrity. C'est un fait, chers amis de l'eau, nous ne pouvons plus l'ignorer. Nous ne pouvons plus ignorer l'eau. Nous devons tout mettre en œuvre pour préserver nos ressources naturelles en termes de quantité comme de qualité. Pour cela, nous devons redonner à l'eau sa vraie valeur et revoir nos usages en conséquence. Une fois prélevée dans le milieu naturel, l'eau a besoin d'être traitée avec une grande attention à travers une ingénierie de qualité, des matériaux et des travaux qui répondent aux meilleurs critères de durabilité et une gestion irréprochable. Gouvernance, transparence et confiance sont les maîtres mots pour une bonne gestion de l'eau. L'usager, qu'il soit agriculteur, industriel ou domestique, doit être informé sur les conditions de réalisation des infrastructures nécessaires ainsi que sur le mode de gestion choisi par les autorités qui doivent conserver la vision à moyen et long terme. La corruption et le manque d'intégrité sont des problèmes mondiaux. Dans les secteurs de l'eau et de l'assainissement, elles conduisent à des infrastructures inefficaces, à une pollution incontrôlée, à des prestataires de services mal préparés aux changements climatiques majeurs et à des communautés entières qui se retrouvent avec de l'eau insalubre, voire pas d'eau du tout. Ensemble, nous pouvons changer cela et protéger les secteurs de l'eau et de l'assainissement dans le monde entier grâce à l'intégrité. L'eau est un bien commun de l'humanité, ne l'oublions pas. L'intégrité de l'eau signifie l'utilisation des pouvoirs et des ressources acquis de manière éthique et honnête pour assurer une qualité de service irréprochable et respectueuse des ressources naturelles. Chers amis de l'eau, je vous souhaite une excellente conférence ainsi que de très belles fêtes de fin d'année en famille et de la pluie. Cher Moise, la parole est à toi.
Merci beaucoup Alain, je dirais même Monsieur le Président. C'est un honneur pour moi de... So I will shift to English because most of our attendees speak English and also our panelists and speakers. So my name is Moaz Alawi. I'm from Tunisia and I'm Senior Manager at SIWI at the WANA office, the West Asia and North Africa office that we opened 7 months ago here in Amman. So it's my big pleasure to moderate this webinar that we are organizing for the first time in partnership with the Mediterranean Institute. And I would like to thank, of course, Alain Messonnier, but also his collaborators, Ida and Malika, for their valuable collaboration and also for the quality support provided for organizing this webinar. So I would like as well to thank our distinguished panelists and speakers for having responded positively to our invitation, and of course all the attendees and all my colleagues in SIWI who contributed to this webinar. I would like also to thank the translators, of course, Sabrina and Rabab. And now we will shift to the agenda. And as you know, we have four showcases to present today before going to a panel discussion with four valuable speakers and panelists. So I will start immediately with the showcases, and the first showcase will come from Egypt, and I'm very happy to ask Mrs. Ghada Abdel Wahab, Director of Human Resources and Capacity Building and Water Integrity within the holding company for water and wastewater in Egypt, as well as Mrs. Yusr El-Wageh and Mr. Islam Oka to present this good practice from Egypt on water integrity, implementation, and success story. So, Mrs. Ghada, please, the floor is yours, so you can start.
Thank you, Engineer Moaz. I'll start now. Well, good afternoon, my colleagues in water integrity from different parts of the world. Today, I'll be taking you on a quick tour of the successful story of water integrity in Egypt. I'm Ghada Abdelwahab, Director, HR and Capacity Building and Water Integrity in the holding company for water and wastewater in Egypt. Later will be joining me Islam and Yusr. They are head of integrity in Alexandria water and wastewater companies. Also with us are our integrity team in the holding company. Today, I'll give you first a quick insight about the water sector in Egypt. We are 107 million citizens. We have 27 governorates and we have 25 companies to serve these governorates. Our water coverage is 90 plus. Our wastewater coverage is 60 plus. And don't be surprised, we have 144,000 employees. As we are here with you talking about our success story in the water integrity, and we shared this success story in many platforms, reputable platforms like the World Water Week and the Arab Water Week and several others, I want to give you a brief on how the water integrity started in Egypt. Water integrity started in Egypt in 2014 with a small office in Cairo in the holding company with only 2 employees. Actually, these 2 employees had very big dreams and very strong vision. We have 2 initiatives at that time. The first initiative was the institutional framework and the capacity building of the employees. And the second initiative was the standardizing of the procedures. For the first initiative, we had implemented 25 departments in the 25 companies and had a selection criteria to choose these employees and had a very strong training program for them. For the second initiative, the standardizing of the procedures, in 2014, we started working, each company working on a certain procedure and sharing it with other companies in the same region. By 2016, we started having a group of companies working on certain procedures and sharing it on the departmental level. And by 2019, we started working on core procedures and sharing them on the sectorial level. Now, Islam, my colleague, will talk to you in depth about the implementation and approach.
Hello, everybody. To complete our journey that Mrs. Ghada had started, I will take you to our approach and how was the implementation of our project. As for our approach, we started with taking the top management commitment through individual meetings and advocacy sessions to enhance the integrity principles in the affiliated companies. Then we started to form the team of integrity in the 25 affiliated companies, and that was through a special criteria held by the HR sector in the holding company and had been well trained and oriented by a selected integrity experts in the MENA region, and that was with the cooperation and help of GIZ. Thus, we started to work in regional groups on selected activities of the companies with the strategy of developing the outputs of every activity, and our tools were risk assessment, mitigation measures, and action plans. And then the stage of revision and approval from the top management. And by experience, we started a new method of working, which was making standardizing procedures in parallel with traditional method, and that was because we discovered sometimes there was non-standardized procedures for some activities. And during our journey, we had prepared some supporting tools like 9 toolboxes for risk assessment, a best practices handbooks, manuals for laboratory sector and performance and evaluation, vacations and promotions. And for raising the awareness and enhancing integrity principles, we had made some banners, posters, and a competition for the ideal worker. We also had finished a risk assessment for 33 processes in different sectors within the affiliated companies. And in the context of capacity building for integrity team, we had 10 training workshops were held for 200 trainees on risk assessment and the operation of the support management. launching an accredited career path integrity for integrity department employees, including 12 training modules. And also, we have made some training and certifying 11 integrity departments managers on a training of the trainers program, and that to serve the career path that had been established. And now my colleague Yusuf will continue our journey in another area of success, which is what we had achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Islam. Good afternoon, everybody. And now, as Mrs. Gheda and Islam have said, that our methodology is standardization. The importance of standardizing procedures is that it helps the affiliated companies to improve their work efficiently and effectively. Also, is considered a kind of SOP that enable all the companies to work on one unified way, and that they can be followed up and controlled easily by the holding company for water and wastewater. We managed to standardize the procedures of recruitment process, and in fact, this guarantees that the recruitment procedures are carried on properly. We also managed to standardize the procedures of occupational health and safety, warehouses, water integrity, and public relations. And we are very proud that we can standardize the procedures of the commercial sector. And as you know that this scope 4 is full of corruption in water industry worldwide. But we managed somewhat to overcome the gap in these procedures, and this affects very positively on customer satisfaction. A commercial sustainability certificate is also issued for the affiliated company who are managed in applying the integrity procedures. And all these standardization processes are made in cooperation with a very specialized technician staff of every field. In addition to all what have been said, we have 2 extra points. Number 1, we have meter reading by using QR technique. It's applied by Gharbiya Water and Wastewater Company, and it's applied via a mobile application. And this enable us to overcome the problem of incorrect readings and also to reduce the customer complaints. Also, we have reallocating excess staff, and this is made by Alexandria Wastewater Company, and this enables us to redistribute the employees according to the needs of every department, and thus we can guarantee somehow a higher level of performance. As a result of the successful standardization of procedures, we decide to go on the same route and to continue on standardization for extra process, for example, which are very related and highly related with reducing expenses. For example, we have chlorine and aluminum consumption conservation, energy consumption conservation, vehicles management, and industrial drainage. Many entities in the Egyptian government are very willing to cooperate and exchange experience with us. For example, we benchmarked with the Egyptian Electricity Holding Company in the field of governance and integrity. In fact, benchmarking is very essential to attain to identify the improvement opportunities and also to attain successful rates than before. We represent Egypt in many conferences, nationally and internationally. For example, we have South Water Integrity Award, Arab Water Week, World Water Week in Sweden, World Water Day in Alexandria, and the Cairo Water Week in Cairo. We are all these works is recognized by the Egyptian government, and we collaborate with the government in drafting the first integrity and the transparency law. And finally, the success journey was highlighted at the WI team, was awarded the Government Excellent Award in 2020 as the best second team. By this award, and this award is in cooperation, in the framework of cooperation between the Egyptian and the Emirate sides. By this award, the hard work of the team is really paid off, and the team is very encouraged to make more and more steps towards achieving the desired goals. At the end, I hope that I and my colleagues can give you a very quick glimpse about our work, and I'd like to thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yusra, for this outstanding experience that you are sharing with us. Thank you also, Ghada and Islam. And I'm sure that other people here representing service providers around the Mediterranean will be inspired by this experience and all these activities and procedures that you are implementing in Egypt. So thank you very much. I just want to say that for our distinguished attendees that they can ask questions directly in the chat. So my colleague Manal will collect and select the questions, and we will try to ask after our panelists and speakers to respond to this question. So you can put all your questions now in the chat, and we will try to respond after. So thank you very much. Now I will move to the next presentation coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the floor is to Mr. Goran Stefatic to present how UNDP contributed as an organization to water integrity in Bosnia through sector reform. So Mr. Goran, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moaz. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. Just a nod would be okay.
It's perfect.
Okay, great. So thanks again, and hello everybody. It's a great opportunity and an honor to present to you what we've done in the past couple of years when it comes to water sector reform in the country, and kind of outlook, or where we want to be in the next period. Now, the presentation is quite long, so I'm just going to skip through most of these slides really quickly. So I have to apologize in advance to translators of the meeting, but I'll try to keep it with a slow pace so everybody can see it. So unlike Egypt, as we just saw on the presentation before, we only have 75% of the country connected to secure potable water, 45% connected to the public drainage system, and only 15% of the water is actually being treated before being discharged into river streams. For EU, of course, these numbers are much higher, 98%, 89%, and 84% respectively. So as you can see, we do have a lot of investments that are necessary in the sector to be done if we want to continue on a positive EU accession path. In addition to all of this, there's a lot of other issues that are hampering the entire sector. Inefficient asset management, huge amounts of non-revenue water in some areas, but on average, the entire country has about 50% of non-revenue water with all water utility companies, which I believe there's 120 something of them. Assets of inventory is incomplete, so it does not allow for calculation of depreciation or fundraising for regular maintenance. There's more problems, of course. Utility costs are far from optimized. There's high unjustified costs when it comes to excessive pumping, purification, transport, and delivery of water. The number of employees in water utilities is not as high as in Egypt, but it's still much higher than the above international standards are prescribing. The cost of employment, actually the cost of labor, are higher than necessary. We have a lot of issues in the public sector because water utilities tend to overstaff their production and their operations. Assigning responsibility for newly built infrastructure is something that is kind of still murky when it comes to procedures and regulations, because most of the local governments are in charge of its investments, but once it's constructed, they are being given to water utilities to maintain them, to use them, but without transfer of title. So that's why these are just some of the issues which required a quality reform in the entire sector. Now, how does it all kind of translate into the sector itself and what the situation is on the ground? Like I said, we have a lot of issues when it comes to implementation of EU water directives. Water management strategy in one part of the country and water management plans are only implemented within less than 50% of its action plan. There's a large number of insufficient investments, especially as you probably could figure out from the numbers. in urban wastewater collection and treatment systems. The numbers there are really, really discouraging. So as a result, we have often incomplete and unsustainable capital investments that are being financed by the international community, especially when it comes to wastewater treatment plants. They're over-processed, overproduced. And in addition to everything, water tariffs and sewage tariffs do not ensure sustainability of investments or the operations of water utility company per se. And in total, how does it kind of refer to the entire triangle in the country, this trifecta? We have policymakers, we have service providers, which are water utilities owned by local governments, which have very low independence. And of course, we have communities and users, which are legal and physical bodies, but the price for each one of them is set differently. There's still variation between the price between the population and the economy. And of course, we have some sort of regulator in between, which is not, for example, let's say, not still legally allowed to do a lot of regulation in the sector per se. How do all these three again link to each other? There's very few binding documents between them. Oops, sorry, that one went over it. There's very few binding documents between them. There's often not a single letter or contract or any legal document in place between the water utilities and users. One sort of intervention that we are doing to the project that I'm managing, the MEG project, is that we've introduced a document, in some cases a really novel document, called Public Services Agreement, signed between the local government and their water utility, which is now trying to set the scene in the right place, in the sense that it lists down roles and responsibilities of both the local government and water utilities, in the sense that now they know what their responsibilities are, who is in charge of what part of the entire operation, who must do what when there's an issue in the entire system, and this is something that this document is trying to bridge. There's again very limited sharing information between all of these actors. There's not a single place in the country where you can go and ask for any type of benchmarking information. Very, very, very rarely do the policymakers talk to each other. Major decisions on management and tariffs are still on the level of local governments, as according to the Constitution. And users of these services rarely know whom to address if they have an issue. They usually go to the water utility, but they should actually be going to the local government because they're in charge. What we are doing, actually what we have been doing since 2016, is trying out different kinds of approaches. First one was, of course, the bottom-up approach, where we tested practical activities that lead to improvements in the financial operational performances and management of water utilities. We worked with them through 17 areas of potential performance improvements. We had very, very good results. We had very good practices that could have been translated into, actually could have been spilled over into different parts of the country. The key regulatory and institutional problems have been recognized on the ground and addressed on the ground in as much possible way that it could be done. And of course, once we kind of used all of our time and options on the bottom-up approach, we approached it differently from top-down approach, which is to reform the legislative, institutional, and financial framework at appropriate administrative level. Because if you look at the constitution of the country, we have too many layers, we have too many institutions that are dealing with only little pieces or little segments of the entire water sector. So it's really a jungle of responsibilities, but it also allows institutions to hide between their approach. And we're also doing the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle approach, both in working with water utilities and evaluating sectoral reform influence. We're doing all this with the support of the international community. What we managed to do in the past 4 years is to organize all the international financial institutions and large donors in the country to form a water alliance. This is basically a novelty approach, which is a performance-based approach, a performance-based against the country, against the government. basically stating that we as a Water Alliance members are ready to continue to provide support, especially in the investment section, but if the government does something that to bring order into the sector. Investments are needed, but investments need to be backed by policies and need to be backed by strategies that the country has to do. It is necessary to ensure the sustainability of investments. This is why we are forcing the country, or we are forcing the government to basically bring relevant regulatory legislative to support the sustainability of the previous investments and the future investments that are essential for the country. One more thing that we supported as a project and that was adopted on higher levels of government is to introduce a methodology for water services tariff setting. It is still being placed on the local government level to decide on the price, but now methodology is being applied in most of the country in a sense that it's equal for all water utilities and all local governments. It has an exact prescribed methodology on which to use for the calculation. It prescribes what needs to be done from the side of the water utility before entering into the calculation. And we are hoping that by implementation of this methodology, we will see the possibility to sustain future investments with and capital investments with the price of the water, if the water itself, rather than depending on local government contributions. Benefits of the methodology is that it provides an optimal organization and productivity on a long-term basis. It secures transparency and accountability in price water setting. It increases quality and scope of services and overall system efficiency. It ensures, this is one of the most important things, the long-term stability and sustainability of water services sector, which is pretty much on the brink of collapse as we speak. It enables highly needed investments to the water sector and grants for long and future investments in this sector. One more just thing is that we've worked with the government on preparing a program for improvement of water services. This will be our first step in the entire process, which basically allows us to work with the government institutions and relevant and line ministries on implementing the entire reform in the sector. It provides clear action plan and responsibilities on who does what and who is responsible for introducing which type of legislation in the country. What we're doing now on the ground is that we are developing 2 new laws on water services at 2 entity levels. We will prepare amendments to law on public enterprises, law on companies, amendments to law on public procurement, because the entire water sector responsibility is really diluted between different types of institutions, and that again creates a large portion for either corruption or lack of efficiency in the sector. One more thing, like we said at the beginning, there's not a single point where we can get information for water utilities and their performance. So we're working with relevant government institutions to introduce a single benchmarking for water utilities. We define data, we define key performance indicators that are going to be introduced at the local level, that are going to then be collected quarterly or semi-annually or even annually in some cases, which will enable the country to have a clear view on where it stands with this entire sector that it controls. These are just some of the lists that we are working directly on the field when it comes to the water sector. The project is providing technical assistance, expert assistance, and a lot of support in expert and professional assistance to water utilities to produce a lot of different documents that are necessary for them to operate. And I think I've overstated my presence here, so I'm just going to stop here and basically open the panel for any questions, or maybe even wait for the panel to close and then be ready to answer any questions through now or through email. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Goran, for this excellent presentation. And also thank you. I would like to thank UNDP for the great work that has been done in Bosnia and ongoing as well. So, and we are looking for this benchmarking work to learn more about these experiences. So I think that your mission was not very easy, as you have kind of multiplicity of stakeholders with in a decentralized context and also with a regulator that is not really operational until now. So thank you very much. I'm sure that we will have a couple of questions for you in the chat. And now we'll move to the next showcase from Albania. And Mr. Yannick Herman Friedel to make a presentation about moving from a pilot integrity management intervention to an integrated component in investment programs. So Yannick is senior partner at Seacon International company from Germany.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me share my screen. Could you kindly confirm if you can see my screen?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here to speak to this distinguished audience. My name is Yannick Herman Friedel. I've been working with Seacon basically since the initial development of the integrity management toolbox, which we started to work on in 2011, 2012 in a cooperation between GIZ, the Water Integrity Network, and Seacon. What I will try to do with my showcase is connect the first two cases, because the approach we've been using is very similar to the one that was presented for Egypt. And over the past years, we've worked in Albania and actually made a connection to integrating this into investment programs, which I think is a nice connection to the case that was previously presented. So I will be talking a bit about those experiences, also how an approach of promoting water integrity actually emerged from an initial idea and a pilot towards becoming an integrated component in an investment program in the water sector. Now, the case I will be referring to is the Water Sector Performance and Investment Program, which is a program funded by the here mentioned development partners, which is the Swiss government through the State Secretariat of Economic Affairs, KfW, and the EU. Just for background context, this program aims to really enhance the performance of Albanian water utilities. And the integrity management work that we're looking at is trying to feed into that process. Now, just very brief step back, what is the integrity management approach? It is ultimately a management model that has a lot of change management components and tries to address integrity in a way that it actually helps to improve the economic performance of utilities by optimizing their business model and doing that through a process-oriented way. Now, this has been developed and tested, as mentioned, since 2011, 2012, has been implemented with more than 50 utilities up until today. And in Albania, we actually started this process at a similar period of time when the Egypt case was also started with a pilot intervention that was added to an existing infrastructure program, which was back then called the Municipal Infrastructure Program. And under that investment program, we piloted the integrity management approach with 5 water utilities. This helped to address some key issues. I've just mentioned a few topics here as examples. It looked at introducing customer communication, but also complaints management systems, looking at debt collection, reducing illegal connections, very typical integrity-related issues. And in addition to making progress around these topics, the approach really also had a significant added value by helping to raise staff awareness on workplace ethics, but also these integrity issues more generally, and how they could help in improving the KPIs of the utilities. Now, the initial pilot that went from 2016 to 2019 was successful in a way that in follow-up to this, now the integrity management pilot was translated into a main program component of the new Water Sector Performance and Investment Program. Under this program, which is ongoing, we're working with 7 water utilities, and we've added a few components which I would like to show you. So the initial program was basically a program that had an institutional reform component as well as an investment component. And in addition to that, we had the pilot that was looking at integrity management through having both integrity management workshops as well as an implementation and coaching process. And that was the first program. In the second program phase, where we actually integrated the integrity management component, you now see a slightly different setup, where we have now been looking at impact management more comprehensively. So in this program, we actually started with a baseline assessment around integrity issues, which then fed into an integrity management workshop, which includes repeated annual integrity management workshops to identify priority areas when it comes to risks and specify activities and instruments that should be implemented to mitigate these risks or react to them. And then we have an annual progress assessment. Now, this is happening over a period of 4 years. And at the end of this period, we will repeat the quantitative assessment, and we'll add a qualitative evaluation. Now, in this new component, what is interesting is that we also have a slightly different component setup. In the first program, we were responsible for the integrity management process. Now that this process has become an integral part of the overall investment program, we actually have a company that is responsible for the institutional development component overall of the investment program and is taking care of the actual implementation of the integrity management. Whereas we as SECON have a strategic backstopping mandate, which also includes a more neutral evaluation of the progress that is being made. So what you can see is we are responsible for all of the elements which are in green here, whereas the implementation is with a company that is called Max Energy and Water, which is doing the institutional development with the company. Now, let me share a couple of insights. So what you can see here is, for example, the results of the baseline assessments that we did with a number of different utilities, where you can see very different results looking at the control environment, the risk assessments, the integrity controls that are applied, as well as corrective action and monitoring. I will not go into the details, but I think what you can take from this slide is that the setting is very different in different utilities in the Albanian context. Now, what is the benefit of integrating an integrity component into an investment program? What I've listed here and what I'll run through is, I think, 2 types of benefits. One is benefits for enhancing integrity and therefore for the integrity management process. But the second element is also the additional benefits that integrity management can yield for the overall performance. What we've seen is that what is very beneficial around that integration is that we can establish a link between fostering integrity and the core business of utilities, looking at how we integrate that into the overall business plans of utilities. We use the integrity management results to basically complement these business plans. And at the same time, we're tapping into the established processes in the utility. So what that means is, if very practically certain integrity risks are identified, and that requires, for example, capacity development activities, what we can do now is we can establish the needed actions that have to be taken, and we can directly integrate them into the existing structures, meaning that they can, for example, be integrated into training activities and overall utility training plans, which of course gives much more institutional anchorage than having an add-on activity that is floating around somewhere in the utility. The integrity management results can also quite effectively be fed into the communication plans, which is helpful both for communication towards the overall sector as well as towards the end beneficiaries. We're aligning progress updates on the integrity management also with overall progress updates on the business plans. And then obviously what is very interesting is money always talks. We leverage the investment programs to actually achieve integrity improvements. So there is an integrated objectives framework that also requires actual improvements within the utilities as part of the objective framework of the investment program. And then last but not least, what is interesting here is we've integrated this from the outset of the program, which actually provides for a long-term continued and facilitated integrity management process, which means that over several consecutive years, we can ensure that integrity management efforts will be implemented. Now, this is some of the upsides. I did not want to leave it at that. I also wanted to highlight a couple of the challenges as well as how we're trying to address them. So obviously, integrity management is not something that is happening only in utilities and not in a vacuum. In Albania, for example, we're looking at an overall regionalization or consolidation process of water utilities, which means that many of the utilities we're working with actually absorb smaller service providers. Now, this obviously draws a lot of resources and can become a welcome excuse, so to say, saying, you know, we're doing well, but we had to actually integrate these poor performing utilities. And now, instead of fighting against this, we've decided to embark on a process to actually try to use the integrity management process as something that supports the integration process and the regionalization process, and rather highlight the links, highlight how integrity management can actually benefit the regionalization, because we felt that this is where we can actually create the most positive drive for integrity management changes. And another example is that, of course, integrating integrity management into an investment program means integrating very specific small activity to larger complex investment, basically. And here, what we faced was that we have overlaps. We have certain institutional development activities that have overlaps with integrity management. And of course, that raises questions as to, does integrity management actually contribute towards achieving certain outcomes and impact, or is it other activities that do so? Now, what we've done in this program is we've integrated the integrity management into the overall development plans of the utilities, which are guided by target indicators. And in that sense, we acknowledge that there is an attribution gap, but we do make a very clear link in between what integrity management is, how that fits into the overall development plans, and how these are linked to overall targets, which is a ways of dealing basically also with that challenge of attribution when we're integrating integrity management into an overall program. Now, just maybe as a concluding remark, what we think is worth highlighting is that the introduction of integrity management at water utilities in the Albanian context, but also generally, is quite an innovative reform process, which promotes economic good governance practices and standards that help to improve utility performance. And how do we actually see the overall logic of that happening is that per dollar invested, integrity management actually contributes to increasing performance and the impact return of investment, which we're interested in by reducing corruption so that funding actually is available for the intended purpose. So the funding is actually available to be put into the areas where investments should be made, and by enabling utilities to improve their processes, governance, and business model by actually reflecting on how they can actually look at these key elements of the utility from an integrity angle, and thereby try to look at optimizing them and enhancing their performance. And that would be my short input. I hope that this was helpful, and would hand back over to you, Wes Alawi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Yannick, for this valuable statement on water integrity and how to enhance the performance of water utilities around investment. So, and it's nice to see that such a program could be duplicated and also upscaled within the country and even abroad. You for conducting this program in Albania and addressing also sensitive topic as investments. So and this is, I think, a good transition for the next presentation, as we will be addressing procurement and risk management in public procurements in Tunisia. So maintenant, j'ai le plaisir de passer la parole à Madame Anissa Febet et Madame Heba Nassef de la SONED, de la Société nationale d'exploitation et distribution des eaux en Tunisie, pour nous parler de l'intégrité dans le processus de passation des marchés, gestion des risques liés au marché public et marché public par voie électronique. Madame Anissa, la parole est à vous.
Merci, Simoaz. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Je suis Anissa Febet. Bon, je dois m'éloigner, je crois. Donc, je suis Annie Safed, directrice du secrétariat permanent de la Commission des marchés au sein de la Société nationale d'exploitation et de distribution de l'eau. Je vais présenter la première partie du sujet suivant, intégrité dans le processus de passation des marchés publics. Je ne traiterai uniquement que la première partie. Ma collègue vous présentera le reste. Je vais commencer par une brève introduction, puis j'entamerai le thème des marchés publics en ligne. Présentation de la SONET. Donc, la Société nationale d'exploitation et de distribution des eaux, c'est un établissement public à caractère non administratif, doté de la personnalité morale et de l'autonomie financière. Elle a été créée en 1968 et placée sous la tutelle du ministère de l'Agriculture. Elle est responsable de la production et de la distribution de l'eau potable sur tout le territoire de la Tunisie. Elle compte 7000 agents et alimente à peu près 3 200 en eau potable, 3 200 000 abonnés. Elle dessert à hauteur de 100% en milieu urbain et 54 du rural à découvert à 95%. Elle fait partie des plus gros acheteurs publics du pays, puisqu'elle gère un réseau de plus de 55 000 kilomètres, 16 stations de dessalement et des centaines de réservoirs, de stations de traitement et de pompage. Par exemple, en 2022, elle a conclu 305 marchés d'une valeur de près de 154 millions de dollars, bien sûr sans compter les marchés à procédure simplifiée. En Tunisie, les marchés publics représentent 15% du PIB, ce qui souligne l'importance économique de la commande publique. Qu'est-ce que la passation électronique des marchés publics? Les marchés publics en Tunisie sont régis par le décret 2014-1039 du 13 mars 2014. Mais en 2013, le cadre juridique des marchés publics a été réformé pour mettre en place un système global de passation électronique des marchés publics appelé TUNEPS. Puis, en septembre 2018, la loi tunisienne a rendu la passation électronique des marchés publics obligatoire pour toutes les entités. Ce projet géré par la ICOP, haute instance de la commande publique, a été réalisé dans le cadre de la coopération tuniso-coréenne. Ce système est assimilé à un marché virtuel qui permet l'interaction rapide et instantanée entre tous les intervenants dans le processus de l'achat public. Une unité TUNEPS a été dédiée à la mise en œuvre et la gestion de la plateforme. Maintenant, on va voir quelles sont les conditions préalables à l'utilisation de TUNEPS. Les acheteurs publics et les fournisseurs doivent s'inscrire sur la plateforme et recevoir un certificat électronique. Chaque acheteur public doit désigner un administrateur et plusieurs utilisateurs par acheteur peuvent recevoir une signature électronique pour effectuer les différentes opérations qu'exige le processus de passation des marchés. Maintenant, je vais citer les 5 étapes principales dans la passation électronique des marchés publics. La première étape, c'est la publication des avis d'appel d'offres en ligne, soumission et réception des offres en ligne, ouverture des offres en ligne, publication des soumissionnaires retenus en ligne et finalement le e-contracting qui consiste en la rédaction, notification et signature des contrats en ligne. Quels sont les avantages de TUNEPS? Elle élimine tout contact direct entre fournisseurs et acheteurs. Elle permet une meilleure traçabilité et accessibilité, augmentation de la confidentialité et de la sécurité des transactions, réduction de la durée des procédures par rapport aux procédures sur papier, réduction donc des coûts, transparence, sécurité et égalité, d'où une amélioration de l'environnement des investissements. Merci. Maintenant, je cède la parole à ma collègue pour vous présenter la deuxième partie de ce sujet. Merci de votre attention. Bonjour tout le monde. Madame Hela Nassef, je suis chef service à la direction qualité. Donc, la deuxième partie, je vais vous présenter la stratégie de management des risques dans les marchés publics. On va dire que vu le poids et l'importance des marchés publics et des conséquences éventuelles de certains risques sur le fonctionnement de l'administration publique, la HICOP a développé une stratégie de management des risques dans les marchés publics, inspirée principalement de la norme ISO 31000 de la version 2018. Cette stratégie a été soutenue par l'Organisation de coopération et de développement économique, l'OCDE, et ceci dans le but d'aider les responsables des acheteurs publics à renforcer la bonne gouvernance et améliorer l'efficience et l'efficacité des marchés publics. Donc, puisque la SONED est considérée comme l'un des plus gros acheteurs publics, elle a été choisie par le CDE et la HICOP en tant qu'un des sites pilotes dans ce projet pour enrichir le registre des risques, instaurer une culture de risque et également mettre en œuvre des règles de bonne conduite en matière de management des risques dans les marchés publics. Alors, les étapes de cette mise en place de la démarche management des risques, elle consiste en 4 grandes étapes. La première, engagement de la direction générale. La deuxième étape, la désignation d'un comité de pilotage composé des départements engagés dans le processus de commande publique et qui a une influence sur la prise de décision. Et la troisième étape, c'est la formation des représentants des départements concernés, accompagnement pour le déploiement. Et plusieurs cycles de formation ont été réalisés au cours de cette formation qui ont permis au comité de pilotage de bien comprendre la stratégie à mettre en place, ainsi que les principaux axes de la norme ISO 31000 de la version 2018. La quatrième étape, c'est la segmentation du processus de passation de marché en 3 grandes activités qui, elles-mêmes, ont été segmentées en différentes sous-activités. Et ces 3 grandes activités, ce sont la pré-soumission, la soumission et le post-adjudication. Quelle est la méthodologie qui a été adoptée dans ce projet? Le comité de pilotage a choisi un marché type clôturé dans une première étape. La deuxième étape, c'était l'identification de tous les risques pouvant entraver l'atteinte de l'objectif poursuivi, y compris les causes de leur survenance et les conséquences qui en découlent. Et à la fin, ces risques ont été analysés conformément aux critères de risque en fonction de leur gravité et leur probabilité de survenance, afin de calculer la criticité qui est le produit G fois V et leur criticité nette après l'utilisation des moyens de maîtrise existants. Et là, c'est l'exemple, on a choisi une sous-activité du processus, qui est la gestion du projet. Et les objectifs ont été identifiés, les risques aussi, les causes et les conséquences qui en découlent.
Là, c'est le calcul, le tableau de calcul de la criticité inhérente et la criticité nette. Après la mise en place des moyens de maîtrise existants. Et à la fin, et à l'issue de cette action de formation accompagnement, les principaux livrables sont la cartographie des risques. Cette cartographie présente une courbe d'appétence au risque. Là, ce qui est en vert, ça représente le risque mineur. Ce qui est en jaune représente les risques modérés. Ce qui est en orangé, c'est le risque élevé et qui exige un plan d'action à court terme. Et la partie en rouge, c'est les risques critiques qui devraient être traités en priorité jusqu'à ce que le niveau du risque soit réduit à un niveau acceptable. Le deuxième livrable est un plan d'action qui est en cours d'élaboration afin de décrire les différentes mesures à prendre pour pouvoir agir face à ces risques au moment opportun. Et ce travail aussi va permettre à la SONET de constituer un registre des risques qui va englober tous les types de risques qui peuvent subvenir et qui servira comme référence lors de l'élaboration des cahiers de charges pour éviter des éventuels conflits ou problèmes au niveau des marchés. Et par la suite, il y aura une extrapolation de la méthodologie sur 20% des marchés d'une année de référence et tous les marchés négociés de la même année. Est-ce que cette démarche a des avantages? Oui, bien sûr. Cette stratégie de management des risques établit une orientation claire et prise des mesures à suivre et se veut suffisamment flexible pour permettre à l'acheteur d'ajuster les outils proposés à son contexte organisationnel, sa mission et ses objectifs envers les citoyens. Elle permet également de prioriser nos actions, d'éviter ou de minimiser les situations pouvant mettre en péril l'atteinte des objectifs ou la pérennité de l'entreprise, de renforcer la confiance des parties prenantes, d'améliorer l'intégrité, d'inculquer une culture de management des risques, d'avoir également une vision globale sur les risques de l'organisation et avoir un reporting pertinent au top management, créer de la valeur aussi et bien sûr, avoir une bonne gouvernance. Merci pour votre attention et si vous avez des questions, voilà, merci.
Merci beaucoup, Hela et Anissa, pour cette magnifique présentation. Moi, vraiment, je suis admiratif de ce processus qui a été mis en place aussi bien au niveau de l'achat en ligne, qui, il faut dire, c'est une expérience qui n'existe pas dans beaucoup de pays, malheureusement, mais qui garantit bien sûr un maximum de transparence dans le processus des marchés publics, mais aussi ce travail au niveau du management des risques et ces deux actions combinées, je pense, font que le processus de marché public soit le plus transparent et qu'il garantisse un maximum d'intégrité. Et j'espère que cette procédure et ces activités soient partagées aussi dans d'autres pays du pourtour méditerranéen. Maintenant, nous avons une série de questions dans le chat, mais je préfère passer au panel. So now I will shift to the second part of our webinar. So I will invite our panelists for this second phase or second part. So we will discuss how to move water integrity work forward in the region. We have three panelists. So Mrs. Alice Jaraisa from Program Manager at UNDP Siwi Water Governance Facility, Mr. Ivan Supan, program manager at Water Integrity Network, and Professor Branko Vucijac from University of Sarajevo. And we will have a couple of questions for this panelists, our distinguished panelists, and we will try to address different aspects and topics relating to water integrity. So I will start with Ivan. So Ivan, could you give us as an introductory a general overview of current integrity trends? It's true that WIN has worked much in the Mediterranean, has not worked much in the Mediterranean, but I think that you can give us an overview of how to implement integrity in water sector in different areas. So, Ivan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Moez, for the invite. I'll try to speak slowly to facilitate the work of the interpreters. Thank you for the invite. It's great to be among a group of practitioners or people interested in integrity. Usually it's the other way around, that governments they don't want to talk about this. So it's good to be in such a group. Yes, as you said, the Water Integrity Network, we are proudly the only global organization working entirely on integrity. Integrity meant as a combination of transparency, accountability, participation, and anti-corruption, but also on good governance. Yes, I think some of the trends that we have been observing are also judging from the conversations and the presentations so far we've had, they do resonate also in the Mediterranean area. And I'm going to be drawing these trends from the one of our, let's say, flagship application. It's called the Water Integrity Global Outlook, WIGO. And the last one was around urban spaces. Why we focused on the urban areas, it's because the projections, going forward, are let's say pointing in all the directions that the cities globally in the whole world will be expanding. By 2050, I think nearly 7 out of 10 people will be living in urban areas. And within urban spaces, there are then informal settlements or slums, and this will double. So what are, let's say, some of the aggravating factors then for urban water and sanitation? So a rapid urbanization, as I said, basically the cities not managing to cope with the expanding needs for access to water and sanitation, but also the climate impact, so increases of flooding or droughts, and at the disadvantages of the infrastructure, the wash infrastructure. So around 38% of urban residents, they still do not have access to safely managed sanitation, and this percentage hasn't gone up drastically in the last years. Another element is also the funding gap. We all know about this missing $114 billion per year that would be needed to meet the SDGs goals. So funding, there are some funding, but not enough. So that, and then the data poverty. So there is, I mentioned before, the informal settlements. There's more and more, this is always goes under the radar. There is not enough, let's say, information on peri-urban and informal settlements on access to water, participation, and the topics that interest us. What makes this also more complex is that the governance models, right, of water, they are not easy to grasp. They are sometimes unclear or matching responsibilities that leaves sometimes some accountability deficits. And altogether, this really makes it vulnerable, let's say, the water sector to corruption. very often these are monopolies. There are, though, many intermediaries, there are informal providers, there are complex infrastructures, and also the funding that can get dispersed or unallocated. So the trends, this was, I'm going to move to something more of a positive messaging now. What are the trends that we've been seeing? So first of all, community engagement. We see both top-down and bottom-up. We see that there are at least attempts to have active participation of local communities, of people, beneficiaries of water services. This would include, for example, initiatives to raise awareness around the topic, build capacities, to empower the people to let's say, to ask the right questions or to read the right data that would then benefit their own. The third sector, NGOs, is quite important for this community engagement because, you know, sometimes there is the feedback loop is disconnected. So, you know, how do you voice the demands from the public and they go into this policy cycle? The NGO sector sometimes can be of help. Another trend is policy, I would say policy and governance reforms. We see that there are, let's say, positive reforms going on, positive developments. So talking about transparent and accountable system, empowering regulatory frameworks or making them more integrity solid, or addressing corruption. We just heard about Tunisia, about the e-procurement system. Linked to that, data and technology. Data technology can be good allies. So you have technology that can help you with data analytics, not only to monitor the water quality, but also when it comes to corruption prevention. I'm thinking about the procurement sector, when you have a whole set of AI-powered system that crunches very large procurement data, and it allows you to, for example, flag risk, integrity risks. Then I would say another trend is around financing models that is changing. We see more and more of public-private partnerships, blended financings. So that's also something to take into account when it comes to then the integrity aspects. And then I would say climate resilience. We are all very excited, but also anticipating what the COP28 will bring us in terms of the loss and damage funding, but also this very large influx of climate financing that is going to be spent, and the water plays a quite important role in that. Cross collaboration, it's a trend we would like to see more. So how water then interconnects with agriculture, energy, food, the WEF nexus as it was blended. And finally, I'm going to stop here. It's also, and it was shared before in Egypt, for example, is a good example, the capacity building and training. So we see more and more capacity building activities for the water sector professionals. And you can train different stakeholders on different aspects. It can be government officials, it can be regulators, it can be water utilities, on a number of topics: water governance, ethics, anti-corruption. So I think it's a good way also of you know, planting that seed, or to start talking about something within the water sector as a whole. I'm gonna stop here for now.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Yeah, so and I can see that water integrity or integrity in general principles are very linked to human rights principles, and especially the human right to water, as you are addressing non-discrimination, accountability, affordability, public participation. So we can find the same principles within the human rights-based approach. So thank you very much. Now I will move to Alice. And my question to Alice is, so this webinar is organized jointly with UNDP Siwi Water Governance Facility. So my question is, what is the facility's role in moving water integrity forward in the region.
Thank you very much, Maz, and thank you to all participants and speakers. It's an honor to be on this panel, and I'm very happy to represent the UNDP SIWI Water Governance Facility, or WGF as we usually call it. This is actually a partnership between UNDP and SIWI, and the fact is since its establishment, I would say in 2005, the Water Governance Facility has been committed and played an instrumental role, I would say, in placing water integrity on the global water agenda, not only in the region, but globally, I would say. We have implemented regional capacity building programs, not only in the Middle East and North Africa, but also in Sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. And these has helped, I guess, or the aim was to build more robust systems. Perhaps I should use the word resilient to corruption. We have had many people participating in these trainings and capacity building programs, and they have actually gained tremendous political endorsement, I would say, in all these regions, and also strengthened institutional capacity of the various water institutions in the participating countries to improve water governance reform and to do the work with integrity, perhaps I should say. Maybe I will say a little bit more about the regional capacity building program that we had in the region, in the Middle East and North Africa. This was the program that we had in 2014 to 2017 with the aim to promote and develop water integrity. And it was in collaboration with both regional and local partners. So we worked in Jordan, Lebanon, Morocco, Tunisia, and Palestine. And the program was funded by the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, and also labeled by the Union for the Mediterranean. So it had the political endorsement of all the member countries, I would say, in UFM. It started with doing the risk assessments at first and highlight the major water governance issues in each of these countries. And then we engaged with stakeholders, with different stakeholders. So it was with water professionals, but also with youth and with government representatives and with journalists and civil society organizations, and ended, I would say, with a regional conference held in Barcelona together with UFM then and SIWI and the Global Water Partnership in the Mediterranean. And so the recommendations, maybe I should say, that came out of this meeting was to further build on collective action for water management with integrity. So we have developed a concept note with focus on accountability building for water and climate security in the Middle East and North Africa, to further investigate building collective actions on water integrity with 5 main action points, actually. And for this, I will need my, I have the action points listed here. So it's clarifying roles and responsibilities of water actors, strengthening professionalism in public institutions for impartial delivery on the public organizations' mandates, building public information sharing and opening the decision-making processes to all different actors in the stakeholder spectrum with particular attention on the next generation, and also on women and vulnerable groups, and also developing engagement and coordination mechanisms with these different stakeholders. The fourth action point was learning from the experiences and sharing and upscaling positive water integrity practices in the region. And then, of course, to monitor progress and benchmarking through the agreed standards.
Thank you.
We have, of course, also supported UNDP country offices, so in Palestine, in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, to enhance the ongoing water governance reform. And by this, we hope, like by applying a water integrity lens, perhaps, we hope that the water governance facility is contributing to empower the stakeholders and also the institutions in the end to adhere to the governance principles.
Thank you very much, Alice.
Thank you.
For this clarification and this update about this water governance facility, and we thank also UNDP for the support. And one of the examples that these programs are working well is that we have now SONED with us today, and I think SONED was participating to this program, and now they are moving forward with other activities like e-procurement and risk management. So now we are short in time, and I have to move to our Professor Vuzicek, and I have a question for him. So, Professor, as of course, cost recovery is one of the biggest issue, I would say, for service providers. So, and at the same time, how to make water tariffs affordable for everyone. So my question, could you tell us more how tariff setting mechanisms could create an enabling environment to secure efficiency and transparency with enhanced public participation? So, Professor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that question, because that is one of the issues that we are dealing in Bosnia and Herzegovina very strongly. The problem here in the whole Balkan area is that very frequently there is one complex utility company that provides several services. So if they provide several services and they don't really separate the costs or the revenues from different services, actually cost recovery is not feasible. It's feasible only on the general level of the utility, where all of the costs are summarized, but not really at the level of the water services, and thus the tariff setting mechanisms is practically disabled. That's what we have found on the ground, and that's what we wanted to deal with and find out the solution to. First of all, the utilities that we are working with right now are introducing separate cost accounts for each of the services, and even below that level, separate cost centers for specifically, for example, water abstraction or water distribution or water purification, etc., in order to define, not only to define and recognize the level of these costs, but also to manage these costs and optimize these costs. So regarding the full cost recovery, this is the first, let's say, assumption to implement the cost recovery principle and, of course, the affordability principle. But the next one is to justify the level of these costs. Once you record, for example, that in the water utility, the cost of the staff is about 60 or 70 or even 80% all of the costs regarding the water services provided, then you already have found out one of the major deficiencies in your company, and that's overstaffing. And overstaffing is in the whole Balkan area, and especially in my country, is heavily politicized because these are always public jobs, and public jobs are preferred by the people, and public jobs are even still better paid than in the private sector, and you can't get fired. And all of these needs to be changed with the approach to the real full cost recovery principle. And what we have introduced with the utilities that we are working is there are several other preconditions to introduce the cost recovery. First is, of course, to separate the costs, but second one is to enable optimization of these costs and disable politicization of the tariffs and politicization of the employments in these utilities, meaning that there are some structures defining the optimal number of employees within these utilities, and these optimal numbers needs to be secured in a period of in between 1 and 10 years, depending on how overstaffed you are at the beginning phase. So these are the primary causes for our different approach to the water sector, and we found out that actually the tariffs are not low only for the general level of the cost, but they're actually practically low for the level of needed investment maintenance. And if you employ 5 more people instead of providing the same level of the money that would be used for salaries, the same level of the money for the investment maintenance and regular replacement of the pipelines and similar, let's say, mechanics, then you would not come to the position which is convenient in the whole Balkans, that you have non-revenue water of 50, 60, or even 70 or more %. That's the approach. Regarding the affordability and the tariff setting mechanism, we created a structure or a manual for getting the best feasible or best possible level of information of average, let's say, expenditure level, not of the income level, because income is pretty much hidden in countries like mine, and only when you work for the public job, the whole your income is known. But all other types of the income, like renting or working at the gray market or having a domestic farm or whatever, you never can find out this level of income. We find out, we have created a manual for getting out the affordability level, which does not limit the tariff itself. It limits the new investments in the area, because investments are those ones that create new services or engage services, and that will leverage the whole tariff, and that might come too high for the average people to pay for. So we created a ceiling of 4% of the affordability for the water services within the total expenditure level of the average family. We also defined what are those population levels of social need for social assistance, and these are subsidized for the water services for the, of course, limited level of consumption, usually 3 to 4 cubic meters per month. Otherwise, they would provide that service for free for their neighbors. And this whole mechanisms right now is tested within 31 municipalities of Bosnia and Herzegovina out of 142, and it becomes as pretty efficient. And the next step, of course, is putting that all into the legal regulation. So we are finding the best practices in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and these best practices are then streamlined into the legal regulations, meaning becoming obligatory for everyone in the country. So this is the approach, our approach to the tariffing system, and our approach to the affordability, where you probably are aware that since the tariffs were politicized heavily in all of these areas, they were always lower than the level needed in order to provide or enable full cost recovery.
Thank you very much, Professor. And I can only agree with you that politicization of tariffs is a big issue, not only in your country, but in many countries, especially with the absence of an independent regulator and efficient regulator. So thank you very much. We are out of time. So I'm sorry for the question, the people that posing questions in the chat. I'm afraid that we cannot respond to you, but I see that some speakers are responding. So, and I will give the floor to my colleague, James Leeton, Senior Manager at UNDP SIWI Water Governance Facilities, to giving us the closing remarks of this webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, MOS. It's nice to see a lot of water integrity friends online, and to me a very positive session, I think, because we, in 1 hour and a half, we were able to put on the table all the different building blocks that are required to build integrity. I noted here the commitment of the management, vision, capacity development, standards and processes, working on enabling environments that needs to be improved and simplified in some cases, and also building alliance and collective action. What I also noted is that, well, in Albania and in Egypt, we also see positive feedback that it can be brought at scale, and so that water integrity is not anymore like pilot activities, but it can be brought at scale, at geographical scale, and as in Egypt, but also in different organizational processes and procedures, like investments, like in Albania, like in Tunisia, in public procurement, but also using technologies to the benefit of integrity in Tunisia. So to me, all this very positive news. Well, from Ivan here, Ivan reported progress, so this is also encouraging for us. Progresses in the community engagement, in policy and governance reforms. So Alice put it the very important and crucial role of capacity development, and Branko, yes, how unraveling the different costs of water services brings transparency and forces accountability. A very concrete example again on the social and economic benefits that water integrity brings if the investment in those activities are seriously made. Over to you, Moez. I will not take much more minutes.
Thank you very much, James, and I would like to thank again IME for collaboration. I would like to thank all our speakers, our panelists, for accepting this invitation and for giving these outstanding statements on water integrity. It was really fruitful for all of us, and I promise that this will not the last activity of SIWI on water integrity, and not the last collaboration with IME. So thank you very much. Thank you for attending this session and staying with us for more than 1 hour and a half. And see you in new and other activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.